Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Halal Gap. I'm your host, Sofia Alani, and I'm not joined by Sikandar today, but he's celebrating his mom's birthday. Happy birthday, Auntie. If you guys enjoyed our episodes of The Halal Gap so far and want to make sure not to miss the next one, please follow us on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher and leave us a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. We have an incredible guest joining us today. Take it away, me. She is a model, YouTuber, and human rights advocate who worked as a creative producer at the digital powerhouse BuzzFeed. Last year, she hosted and produced the Asif original food docu-series Dinner Inshallah, which explores the stories of Muslim American communities through their relationship to halal food in restaurants. On top of all of that, she has not one but 2 law degrees. Joining us, where are you located right now? I had to confirm that before
I'm everywhere. I'm nowhere. I'm in San Diego, but I'm in LA, so just Southern California in general, but yes.
Okay. Joining us all the way from Southern California, please welcome Amal Dalmar.
Hi. Wow, what an introduction.
I also usually have Sikandar doing the backing track of the other woos, so it's a lot more collective.
No, it's
but
great.
Imagine
I feel it.
So many woos. Good.
I feel it. The energy is definitely felt. Thank you, and I'm so happy to be here today.
We are so happy to have you. It's you've had an incredible journey, and I'm so excited to talk a little bit more about it. So typically with our guests, though, we usually start right at the beginning. So if you wanted to tell us a little bit about your origin story.
Origin story. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. I've watched a few episodes. I just watched Digital Sisterhood episode with Ada, and that was amazing. So I'm excited to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me. So my background, I am actually originally from the East Coast. I was born in Washington, D.C., and raised in Northern Virginia. I essentially kind of had the very common, childhood immigrant upbringing, post 9/11, kind of coming of age in that really interesting time frame, especially in that part of the world, or the country, I should say, which was very interesting, in a few ways. It kind of, I did a lot of 5th grade, tell us about Islam presentations at a very young age when I was I don't know how to fight Islamophobia as a fifth grader. So I had to kind of literally do that a few times. And growing up there was interesting, kind of also being, a Black woman too, because there's a lot of ties to colonialism, right? I remember doing a lot of Jamestown trips and visiting Monticello, where Thomas Jefferson lived, or Washington lived. So there's a lot of kind of I remember growing up really had to confront my identity at a very young age, which was interesting. I didn't know I was doing that. I guess I didn't have the words for it, but that's kind of what was happening. And then, having to do a lot of you're a Muslim. What is that? Even though Northern Virginia really
tell us more.
Exactly. Even though Northern Virginia is a really diverse area of Virginia, and has a lot of immigrants, has a lot of Somali people. I'm from Somalia originally. So it was a very interesting place to grow up. And then when I was around high school, I moved to San Diego. So that was literally a culture shock. I remember feeling that just the world of a difference, because it was just so incredibly different. The attitude of people were different, just what people cared about were different. It was interesting. And then at a very young age, I was, a very creative person. I didn't know to call it that. Played the violin, elementary school to middle school.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I wish I kind of kept at it. I didn't, but you look
still
back.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. I did dance when I was young, so I did ballet, jazz. I love just drawing. I love but at the core of it, I just love telling stories. Literally just doing that. And that was something that I fostered, being, from a Somali family. We love telling stories. That was just kind of the way I connected to my heritage, the way I connect to my family, the way we shared everything. And then growing up in California, I kind of brought that energy. So that's kind of my origin.
Nice. So a couple questions. So the kind of culture shock, was that mostly about the East Coast, West Coast difference, or was it more than that?
It was a few things. Actually, some friends that I met when I moved here, always tell me like, you were so mean, like you were mean. And I was like, I could literally, they were like, we didn't like you, you know, and people would confront me about that. And I got into fights. Yeah. Like people did not like me. And I think looking back at it, it was because I was very straightforward. Like I think East Coasters tend to be just more straightforward. You know, and I didn't even know that's what I was, but that's kind of the aura I was giving off. Also, I think the Somali communities are very different, East Coast and West Coast. You know, East Coast, they're very, I think the immigrant communities in general are very different, you know, in terms of like when people immigrated, and then the conditions in which they immigrated are very different. San Diego is actually one of the largest refugee communities in the country. So we have a lot of different refugees, not only from Somalia, but Vietnamese refugees, now Iraqi refugees, like a lot of different types of very vibrant communities, whereas Northern Virginia are immigrants that are more established, right? Like that, it was just a different kind of vibe. So it was different in a few ways, but that was, I think, the major differences.
Yeah. And it's so funny too, you say kind of like being asked to really speak to Islam as like a young child after like 9/11 and everything. And yeah, like I think that's definitely a shared experience that a lot of kids who grew up kind of were in that elementary school, junior high school time. I'm sure older kids too.
Yeah.
But it's so fascinating, like how ill-equipped we are. Like I'm trying to think of what I said when that happened. And I remember just being like, the things I heard from like adults in my life. So it was like, oh, well, you know, like Islam means peace. So like, how could it be a violent religion? And like, that was the line. And I was like, see, like, we're peaceful. But it's like, because I think, as like whatever, 10 years old, I had no idea how to speak to like the kind of geographic and like colonial and like all this history that was like taking place and like how this came to be and like where the Islamophobia was coming from. But I think it was wild how as young kids we were, because even I feel like older people were asking kids too, and you were like,
And you grew up in Canada, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So I can only imagine kind of the differences there as well. But you know, growing up, especially in Northern Virginia, there was so many deep connections to what happened. Of course, the DC. That day, I was actually in DC on a field trip. So it was just a lot of very visceral feelings, kind of associated with everything. You know, and we unfortunately experienced, you know, our community experienced some hate crimes, which I know that was the thing that a lot of people were experiencing. And it made me feel like, okay, I have to step up at a very young age. And like you were saying, take responsibility for a religion that was just a lot more vast and complex, more so that I can really even wrap my head around at a young age, with feeling like, okay, if I don't do anything, nobody will. I felt that at a very young age, that feeling of ownership, but more so kind of fear of, you know, if I don't say something, then somebody else can just say whatever they want. And I think, I remember my teacher being like, okay, can you give a presentation on Islam like Thursday or whatever? And I was like, okay, like, if you know, in the year of like literally starting at the like, where do you even start? You know, just like being so confused by that, but being like, I have to say something. And I remember there was like one other Muslim girl in my grade, and she was in another class, and we both were giving presentations, and we were like, okay, like, what are we gonna say, right? And she was also Palestinian, so I remember had a lot of other kind of like interesting thing that she wanted to kind of bring up, being Palestinian. And I was like, okay, how do we do this? And I remember bringing the Quran, like a show and tell, like we're like, this is the book, like it's here, like what can you know what I mean? So I remember just feeling like ownership at a very young age.
Yeah. And do you feel like prior to kind of that experience, did you feel like a lot of Islamophobia, or was it like mostly after that you were like, okay, there's intersections of my identity here where like I'm a Black woman, but I'm also Muslim, and like both of those are kind of things that people are going to treat me a certain way about?
Yeah, I think before that I felt different a lot of times. I think especially when you're being raised in an immigrant family, you know, your parents are trying their best to be like, you're different, but you're the same, but you're different. And, you know, it wasn't until recently until I kind of really like wrapped my head around like, okay, my parents grew up in a place where they were part of the majority, right? Like they were part of just everybody. And they don't know exactly the tools to instill in me to make me feel like, okay, you're different. So I remember just being like, wow, like what a realization, right? Like a lot of our families, they didn't really have those tools to be like, oh, well, unless people did grow up kind of in a place where they were the minority. But I felt a lot of times that I had to kind of explain myself and I didn't understand why. But there was a lot of racism as well, like kind of with originating. I remember kind of learning about like slavery at a very young age. And, you know, one of the students being like saying the N-word, right? And then being like, okay, well, you're not supposed to say that. Why? What are these feelings, right? Like kind of doing that at a very young age. And then kind of when it was 9/11, then having to add a different layer to that identity was something that I think I struggled with. And then I think that at a very young age made me very, you know, like put me on a quest for justice, I guess, to, it felt very visceral, the feeling of being able to look at these injustices in the world and in our country specifically and do something about it. I think that's where it sparked in me.
Yeah, totally. And in terms of like your kind of cultural and family history of storytelling and using that as a medium to kind of find that justice, can you talk a little bit more about how those two came to align for you?
Yeah, you know, I think for me, I was always so fascinated by stories, but I didn't know exactly why. Somalia, people say that, you know, we are a nation of poets, right? People love stories, they love poetry, singing, you know, these types of ways to express yourself. And I love that, right? And I think something deeply that was ingrained in me at a very young age is that, you know, especially through Islam, is that justice, you know, peace without justice is really nothing, right? There has to be justice in the world. Exactly. And, you know, especially as somebody who is Muslim in this country, we have ties to, and an immigrant, and have ties to a lot of places around the world where you necessarily have never been, right? Like I've never been to Somalia yet, but I have such ties. Not only Somalia, so many places around the world, whether it's Palestine, whether it's Afghanistan, you know, whether, you know, it's all these places around the world that have seen these deep rooted injustices throughout my lifetime. So I grew up kind of with that in the background. And I remember specifically in high school, there was a time when there was some offense to Palestine that was happening, and I wanted to raise money for it. And there were people in my school who were like, you can't really do that. Like, what are you doing? Kind of, and made me question it. And I remember that's when I wanted to be somebody who knew what I was talking about and become an advocate of some sort. So I did that throughout my community as well. There was also a lot of recent refugees in San Diego. So I was always in that realm. And I think when it comes to storytelling, the way you advocate, the way you connect, and the story you tell when it comes to these types of issues really is the make or break between whether somebody opens their heart to what you're saying versus if they're like, okay, well, that is another thing I can't really do anything about. So I learned that early on.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I think too, like, as much as there's like so much poetry in our communities as well, and like so much to do with the written word, I feel like oral history in and of itself is like so anti-colonial just because of the fact that it's like based on survival, right? Like it's like passing down these stories from generation to generation that like have to be like kept within the wisdom of like our elders. And so I find that like, yeah, like storytelling has such like a beautiful purpose, I feel like, in like injustice and advocacy work because of that. And I remember like when like having like all of my like white friends, Canadian friends who had just like piles upon piles of like heirlooms and like family things. And I remember always being so jealous because like my family half came here as refugees and then half kind of as immigrants. But yeah, like we didn't have anything. And my mom would always be in stores and like looking at the clothes and being like, oh, that like used to be in fashion in the 70s and I had that. And I was like, where is it? So I can have it. And she was like, it's gone. Like, I don't have it anymore. And I was like, darn, like there was like so much, I think, like physical items, but I think the fact that we're still able to hear the stories is like so important.
So powerful. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So kind of when you were in school and kind of working towards this kind of incorporating this activism and like and being a part of a visible change that you could kind of see, like, do you have a story about the first time that you were able to see your own impact actually having made a difference?
Well, I think early on, there was a specific incident. I remember I was in senior year of high school, and that was the year Obama was being elected for the first time. So that's it was a very not only politically charged but like racially charged time, interestingly enough. But it very much was a time. And I remember I was in AP government at the time, and my teacher was this very conservative older guy, and he would just be so the way he would tell the government history would always somehow weave in international politics, and he would say very like problematic things. But one thing he would always say was that he gets his information from Fox News, which
God.
Yeah, exactly. And for those of you who don't know, it's Fox News in the US is a very conservative news channel.
And even back then, like, it's probably worse now, but
exactly.
It's always been a bad situation. Yeah.
Exactly. Back then, I think it was a little more like dog whistly, and now it's like very much like we're blatantly, you know what I mean, who we are.
Horrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he was just such a he would always say that's where I get it from, and not only that, but he would say it's very neutral. He would be like, it's very neutral. I got this.
Ooh, and that's dangerous.
And I remember just thinking like, that's not, and I was very vocal. I would, raise my hand and be like, no, it's not. My parents are like, they love watching the news. They always always have it on. Very, very, politically aware, both from this country and internationally as well. So I knew what I was talking about. I remember I'd be like, no, it's not. And then he would just say things that were so wrong, right? And I would always raise my hand and say, no, that's what are you talking about? And one particular time I remember, it was Halloween. I remember that because everyone was dressed up, so it was such a weird memory in my brain of like everyone dressed up and we're having this very passionate fight. And so he was saying that he does not think that McCain said something very racist against Obama. I want to say he said something like bomb Iran, something like that. Like he said it in he said that, right? And he was saying he didn't. I think that's what it was. I'm not really sure. He was saying he didn't say it. I was like, he did. And I remember I like went to my next class and like printed out an article. I don't know why I did that. I was kind of like a very rebellious, I don't know. And I
love that. I love that so much.
I was a rebel. I was like, yeah, he did say this racist thing, whatever it was. I forgot.
Yeah.
And then he got so upset that he stopped teaching class. Like he stopped as in protest. It was a Friday and he stopped teaching. He's like, I'm not going to teach anymore. And then he just like stopped and we're like, okay, weird, whatever. Like we'll deal with that on Monday. And Monday came and we were first period, right? So he and everyone else has him throughout the day. So he was like, I'm not teaching anymore because some people think they know more than me. And he was talking about me. And literally he didn't teach. He was like, okay, so she can teach you or you can teach yourself. And he just stopped teaching. And not only did he not teach our class, he didn't teach every period of the all of the classes. Just, and everyone kept coming up to me like, what did you do? And people were mad at me. Right, because they're like, we need to study for the AP test.
The worst.
I know you.
That's
like, we
fair.
have to
the
study.
Academic, yeah.
And I was like, I didn't make him stop teaching, right?
He's an adult man. Like, manage your own emotions.
Exactly. So then everyone was like, really? And then people were like, you should apologize. I was like, me? Apologize?
Absolutely not.
Literally never. And then I went to my other teachers who were like, horrified. I'm like, what? And basically then after like 2 days, he's like, I need to talk to you. And he pulled me aside and he essentially was like, people really listen to what you say. You're a very smart girl, but you need to really just understand people are listening to you. And if they're listening to you and not me, then what? And so essentially, long story short, I knew then that what I said was very important and very, very impactful. And I learned that at that age, that as long as I know what I'm saying and I'm very confident that people will do things like this, it was taught me a very important lesson. It was like, people will do things like this, but as long as I know I'm talking the truth and doing it with a good intention, then, I'll be able to handle it. But I need to keep saying, and it's a small example, but at the end of the day, like, people really, people listened.
Yeah. And that's incredible. But also even just like seeing firsthand the fear of like what your words or like your actions could kind of do to somebody who's like so in love with the status quo too. I think like, I imagine that would have been like so cool to see in like in a way that's like also you're an adult, like figure your stuff out. But,
exactly.
But that's really, really cool. I know that's incredible.
It was fun. Yeah. It led the way to me doing that a few more times in my other classes going forward, but it definitely was time like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah. You're like, I'm a badass. No big deal. That's very, very cool. Okay, so moving on from kind of your high school experience, you go to university and you decide to pursue a degree in law, but you are not a practicing lawyer. So tell us a little bit about your journey kind of with law and through law school and what kind of made you decide to not practice or work as a lawyer.
Yeah, so actually in college, I had no idea that I wanted to do law. I wanted to do international like politics. I loved human rights, international, affairs. I was very much fascinated by just that world because I, again, like I said, very much saw myself as part of the world early on, and wanted to advocate for as many people as I could. So I went into college and immediately I went to UC San Diego. And at the time, UC San Diego, my second quarter there was, I don't know if you've seen the show or movie Dear White People.
Yes.
So I don't know if I didn't watch the show, but that much of the show. But the movie essentially was based off of a blackface party that was there at their school, and that's essentially was one of the inspirations was what happened at UC San Diego, because there was a blackface party put on by a frat where they acted like black people, and for Black History Month. Yeah, it was insane.
Oh God.
It was insane. And they even had this like invitation go out that was like, make sure to speak very ignorantly, make sure your Yeah, you can look it up. Actually, there's a lot of studies done on this, and there's actually a book written about this. I know.
Oh my gosh.
And people dressed up as black people. It's called the Compton Cookout, by the way. I encourage everyone to look it up because it really did happen and it was insane. So I remember that happened, and that sparked like this entire year of protest, because at the time it was 0.03% black people at UC San Diego. So it just led a huge movement, right, on the campus. Protests, sit-ins, where the students, all the student organizations and minority student organizations were demanding more access and more resources from the university to essentially outsource or outreach to different communities to make sure our people are also getting into the school, and also students when they're on campus to allow them to have resources and community to feel safe on campus. That led to even more outrage. There's a noose found in the library. One of the TV channels, these students who were very racist essentially had this racist tirade. So it led to so many things. That whole semester, I was essentially went headfirst into organizing and activism. That was my second quarter. And so for the full 4 years, I did that essentially more so than actually in class. I was organizing. I did so many things. I was a part of the Student Affirmative Action Committee. I was the co-chair of that. I actually wrote our divestment resolution, and all throughout, I essentially we passed the resolution to divest from any corporations that were military funding any apartheid countries, specifically Israel, in that year as well. So long story short,
amazing.
I was doing that, and it was fueling me. I loved it.
Yeah.
I was in it. I literally was like, I always say when I look back on my life, I'm like, I've never been so present in a moment than I was when I was in college. I was just there. Like, I wasn't thinking about the future.
Yeah.
I was just so in the moment, and that's what I wanted to be. I did not understand there were many different avenues, and this is what I talked to a lot of people about. I didn't know there were different types of avenues for people like me who were very, very socially aware, who loved advocacy and wanted to genuinely be, with the people and help and connect. That wasn't law school. That wasn't being a lawyer. I didn't understand there were other avenues. So college finished, and I was like very, very sad. I was one of those people who were very sad after college, because I just was like, okay, what do I do? I worked for a year at UCLA, and then during that time, I was like, I guess I have to study to get into law school. So I wasn't I should have just listened to myself, because I was like, this doesn't feel right, but I want to do this other thing, which is be an advocate, right? So I just kind of like gritted my teeth and did it. It was very difficult. Law school, for anybody in the States who've applied, essentially is kind of like a very difficult process to get into unless you know how to do it, which many of people, especially from our backgrounds, kind of don't really, we're not seen in those spaces. Anyway, I did it. I get to law school, hate literally every minute of it. Like literally every minute I hate it.
No.
It was so hard. It was scary, which I can just go further in depth into, but it was not a good time. And then fast forward, in my second year, by chance, and this was, one of my moments I look back and I'm like, this was just such a pivotal moment. A professor was giving kind of like a lecture in one of my international law seminars, and he was like, by the way, you can go abroad and essentially go for a whole year in London and have like a dual degree while doing your last year, like basically your third year at law school. And he's like, anyway, and like continue what he was saying. And I was like, huh, weird. And
rewind the tape. Wait,
exactly.
What?
Yeah. And at the time I was like, I was at my wit's end. I was also in moot court. I don't know if you know what that is. It's essentially a mock trial, but on steroids, and our school was like number one. So they were so intense. Like, I sometimes get nightmares about it because it was so intense of a process. And we went all the way to the international level, because I did the international one, so I thought it was cool. Yeah, it was actually, I can't even describe it other than just being extremely anxiety inducing. Essentially, I was at my wit's end with that, because my second year, almost at the end. And I was like, let me just apply. So I applied to this program, and it was the LLM program, which is essentially just like a master's in law that you do in conjunction with your JD. So I went to London, and the school that I went to was the University of London SOAS, which is, I had no idea. It was a sister school for my school, which was UC Hastings, by the way. That's where I went. And, it was, the school was essentially an activist hub, and I had no idea. Cool. It was just filled with so many amazing activists, former and current. People were just so kind, but I never got to travel, right? But in my life. So I got there, and I had just the most amazing time. I met such amazing people from around the world. School was so international. I got to travel. I got to just clear my head. And it's interesting too, because I did not know how stressed I was and how in over my head I was in law school until I left that whole environment. And as soon as I literally landed in London and got to breathe, I was like, I'm not happy there. And it was 2016, so it was right after the Donald Trump election in the States, and everyone was kind of just reevaluating everything at the time. So I was just like, you know what? If I want to be the best advocate, best person, I can't be a lawyer because I would never be the best lawyer. Not because of like I lack skills, but I lack the heart, right? And I had to have a conversation with myself, and I made a promise. I said I just want to be the best version of myself. Whatever that title is, I don't know yet, but I just want to be the best version. And whatever that looks like, I want to make sure that I'm 100% passionate. And yeah, in a nutshell, I decided I wasn't going to take the bar, which is like interesting conversation to have with my parents. And then I was like, you know what, one step at a time, but this comes first. So that was the short version of the story.
Yeah, wow. So when you talk about like law school being scary, like kind of was it, because I also wanted to go to law school. I wrote my LSAT and spent like a gap year kind of working for a like nonprofit that gave legal advice for free to low income people.
Oh, wow.
And it was horrifying. I think like I didn't end up going to law school because it was just, I was like, this is the brokenness of the system, particularly with like criminal law and just like how racist it is and how closely linked it is to policing and all this stuff. And I was just like, and then I had a friend of mine who was a newer lawyer, and she would just talk about how much of an old boys club it was, and how like she was white, and she was like still in these rooms and these spaces being referred to as like young lady in the courtroom instead of like counsel or like whatever. And I was just like, pardon me, and like getting in trouble for stuff that was like that her like male colleagues were getting promoted for. And I was just like, oh my God, like would I be doing a disservice to my clients if I was to enter this arena and like not setting them up for success because like the system isn't even designed to like help me be a good advocate for them? Did you have like a similar kind of?
Yeah, that is so spot on. I had a very similar experience. First of all, I think on a general level, I was shocked because I came into law school understanding that I was like, okay, we don't like really respect the Constitution, right? Like, no, you know, in a way where it's like, okay, we respectfully abide by the laws, right? Of course, but it's not, it's the foundational kind of concept was established by people who literally owned people, right? Like, so I was kind of coming in thinking we all had that general foundational understanding.
We're all on the same page.
Right. Yeah. But we absolutely were not. That was like my first shock. Everyone was like, the way they talked about these institutions was just such a shock to me because I was definitely in a bubble, right? Like I was in a bubble. The people I was around, the conversations I was having was so high level, right? Like kind of very much, you know, assuming that we all understood the flaws in the system, right? And that wasn't the case. People were just very different, right? So that was that, and I felt just confused by it because also law school, for people who don't know, you're essentially like learning. You're learning how to rewire your brain, especially the first year. You're learning how to think like a lawyer, right? So it's a lot of just like case law, and it's a lot of like thinking like a lawyer, whatever that means. Essentially, it gave me like, I still sometimes have nightmares because we would have cold calls. And it was scary. I know that most law schools do it. Maybe some don't, because they want to kind of maybe respect mental health, which I appreciate. But you would go home and you have like maybe 2 or 3 classes a day, and you would read, right? Like a lot of these times, first of all, case law in general is so dense, right? The writing is so
dry,
dense, and dry and complex, and a lot of times you're reading old cases. So even the newer cases, you were like, okay, cool, like this is in, you know, normal English. But the old cases, not the case, right? And so you would essentially have to kind of parse through that and even understand what was even going on, right? Then you would get into class and you would be called on, right? Just randomly to talk about the case, and then, you know, talk about the
oh my God,
you know, merits of the case, talk about what the dissent said.
Were you graded on that?
And that's the thing, you weren't. It was really just about, and the weird thing is, you knew it, but it was more about your like reputation. Like you wanted everyone to just.
You can't not be prepared.
No. And it's not only not being prepared, it's like a different level. So for example, I had one professor for civil procedure, which is a very difficult class. It's a first 1L class, first year class, and it was one of my first classes, right? So he would do this thing where he would come in, right? And he just and that's the thing, law school is a lot of big personalities, right? Like people just want to be very, very like respected. It kind of, it's kind of an air of being in the law. Not everybody, but in the general law space. So he would come in, right? And then she would write a letter on the board from A to Z. And that letter was the last name of everyone on call that day. And you wouldn't know if you were the only D in the class or the only M or whatever, or she would only call on maybe you that day and then someone else tomorrow or never. You wouldn't know. So it was like terrifying. And then they would,
so stressful.
And they wouldn't just, they'd be like, okay, Miss Dalmar, tell me what happened in this case. And you would say what happened. Like, that's right. They would go through and they're like, Miss Dalmar, can you tell me what the dissent said? And you're like, they said this. And it's like, and then like 10 minutes later, can you connect it to what we talked about yesterday? And then you have to do that. Anyway, it was a lot. And it was just so insular there. And you're with the same, you're in a class, right? You're with the same people all day for the whole year. The same people. So it kind of became like high school. And by the way, this is just my experience. I know people had a better like law school experience. My school was very competitive because we're in San Francisco and people were very, very, very competitive because there was like all the government jobs there, all the tech jobs there, in terms of counsel, big corporate law. So everything was there and it was really competitive. So it was something that what was highly coveted to go there and also to succeed there. So it was definitely something that every single day was like, I hate the fact that, I have to do this. And also my brain doesn't think that way. And I didn't realize that, my brain just did it.
Yeah. Oof. That sounds horrifying.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So in all of that, do you feel like there's like any skills that you did gain in law school that were helpful or that you do kind of use now that you're like, okay, there's no regrets, like it was an experience and it was a thing and you didn't do it, but like at least you have this now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, my favorite thing I gained from law school, I made the most amazing friends. Somehow in the, spiral of law school, I made just amazing friends and I love them and they're my best friends. And on top of that, I also learned how to think like a lawyer, which is something that they teach you for the entire first year. That's why it's so hard. People call 1L one hell because it's incredibly challenging. But on top of that, I was in moot court, which is essentially mock trial, but on the appellate level, and you have to argue everybody had to argue for 25 minutes and give a 25-minute basically memorized speech while you're also like fielding questions from, the judges. And that just taught me how to think on my feet and just speak and how to convince people. I think people always say like, oh, you would be such a great lawyer, you know how to argue, but it's so much more than that. And it kind of gave me the confidence to say that if I'm able to just use my words, I'll be able to get at anything. I honestly feel that way. And that's something that I feel law school taught me, or essentially like built on. I think I had a little bit of it before I went on, but it did a lot of damage, especially to my mental health and my, just confidence sometimes. But overall, it's my education. And I think it gave me the leverage to know that I can do anything. It was hard, but I did it. Yeah. And it gave me that confidence.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. That's good. I'm glad there were good things that came out of that kind of potentially almost entirely hellish experience. Okay, so then you leave law school, you decide you're not going to take the bar. What do you do next?
So I came back home and I was, first of all, so sad that I left London. I fell in love with London. It was just such a dream. Have you been there before?
on like a stopover, but not an official stay in London type of trip yet.
You have
Inshallah,
to
in the
go.
future.
Inshallah, it was amazing. So essentially, I was having kind of just withdrawals, and then I had to write a thesis. Now, like I had to write like a master's thesis because I was getting a master's degree.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
Well, yeah, I was in my head, I was on a trip, but really I was also in a master's program. So I had to write a thesis.
Right.
And when I was doing that, I didn't know what I was going to do essentially afterward. And a friend of mine, was like, why don't you apply for this? It was like the first and only thing I applied for. It was a BuzzFeed, the media company, essentially fellowship that they were having. And it was a 3-month fellowship. And my friend was like, why don't you just apply? I was like, okay, let me look into it. And I think the deadline was like in a week. I was literally also writing my thesis that was also due at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And I looked into it, and you had to film a video, you had to make a video. And I've never made a video before. I don't have any video making equipment. And I asked my friend, I was talking to my friend about it who lived near me, and she was like, oh, I have a camera and, can use it. So I just filmed a video. It was, I think the only instructions were you had to just, make it on a topic or a article or a video they had already made. So I made it about something about Muslim related. And then I sent it in. It was not very good. I edited it on iMovie. I didn't know how to edit. I just cut out the bad things and put it together. I didn't understand how to edit at that time. And, we didn't have the technology, not aging myself, but we didn't have like CapCut and like those other things you can just do on your phone. So I had to do it on my computer, and I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And they essentially responded back to me and said, you have an interview. So I interviewed with them. And during the interview was really funny because they had no idea what was on my resume. They were like, what is this? Because it was all legal things. It was all, internship things. And they were like, literally, like, what is this? They were very kind. And, but they were like, we don't know what any of this is. And I was like, forget about that. Let's just talk, okay? Let's just talk.
Yeah. And don't worry about it.
I'm like, don't worry. I literally said, I was like, you know what? Do recipes really matter? Let me talk to you today, one-on-one, as a human to human. So I did that, and I got the job. Like, I don't know what I said.
That's incredible.
Yeah, because I had no experience. Like, when I say no experience, I mean 0 experience. But it was a fellowship that essentially was a very hands-on creative producing fellowship. It took me through every single kind of stage, whether it was the ideation process, the actual filming, then the editing, then the everything else that comes after. I just got a crash course for everything. And then essentially after 3 months, they wanted me to stay on, so I did. So I was there for a few years, and it was just such an eye-opening experience because I really learned the nuts and bolts of just how to get my ideas from my head to the screen. Right. And it was really scrappy because our production was very scrappy. Like, you did everything. You had little help, but you were doing every single process from, the casting. You had to pick the people in your videos, and you had to set up the room. Right. You had to do the lights, then, of course, film, and then edit. Right. And then make notes. So it was just all of it. And so I learned so much, and I met such nice, kind, creative people that really inspired me during that time. It felt like I was kind of going to school again. That's kind of how I describe that period of my life.
Yeah. That's wild. So you like finessed your way into this fellowship with like no background, and then just killed it enough that they were like, please continue to work for us. Like, That's unreal. Like, mashallah, what God-given talent exists within you. That's unreal.
Oh, thank you.
So when you were there, like, because now you have like your YouTube channel and everything, like, clearly there was like something there that kind of connected you to like that video content production. Can you talk about like what was that? Why video?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always loved creative arts, but I'd never thought of myself as an artist necessarily. And that was because when I thought of artists, I thought of painters, right? Or like, I don't know, singers or like writers. I didn't necessarily think of myself as an artist. So it was a medium that I thought, oh, I can learn this. And I loved YouTube, right? I loved specifically like storytelling content visually, right? Like I loved the day in my life. I love documentaries. I love just people taking you onto their day and showing you how they live and having you feel it, right? Really emoting that, even if it's a simple like meal they're having or a conversation you're having with a friend. I just love the power of that. So I already kind of liked that, and I felt like I had, you know, like a image that I wanted to portray. I didn't really have the tools for it, but I was like, I think I can do this. So when I went into that fellowship, I wanted to tell a story, but more than that, I wanted to kind of just learn how to best do it. And it was something that took me a few years to do because I'm a perfectionist and I wanted to make sure that I was telling the story and really emoting those feelings, right? And I loved how people did it through documentaries, through, you know, vlogs. I felt that was so powerful. So that was something that connected me to it because I felt like I could do it and I can incorporate a lot of things. Now when I make my vlogs, my YouTube channel, it's kind of what I call it a visual diary, right? Because I incorporate all these different, you know, whether it's like clips from my camera, clips with my phone, just things like funny things I see. And then I also write, right? So I write kind of scripts sometimes about things I'm feeling, right? And then I kind of interweave that. So it's very personal, and I think that's what drew me to it, that you can essentially have so many different types of modalities when you are making it. It doesn't necessarily have to be writing, doesn't necessarily have to be visual, you know, even, you know, having paintings, having anything, and you can kind of have everything with that lens, right? And I would love, you know, to call myself like a filmmaker. I don't think I essentially would classify myself as that yet, but I love the idea of capturing that all through a lens.
Yeah, that's very cool. And yeah, like just like with the Mosquers, like that's 100% our understanding of like the importance of like all art, but particularly visual art in kind of telling stories and creating empathy, because like you show someone's experience and you show their story, and then that's how you connect. Like that's how you kind of have any change of heart or change of mind or anything is like through that. So that's very cool. And so then moving on, how did you kind of get involved with Dinner Inshallah, which there's a question mark at the end of it. So like, is it Dinner Inshallah or is it like Dinner Inshallah? Like, how do I how do I say
Thanks
it properly?
for asking. First of all, before I begin into that, titles are very hard. Making a title.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
I couldn't even imagine. How do you pick?
But the title actually does have a question mark because it's a question. It's like you're asking someone like dinner inshallah, like you're asking someone that. Which that was like the last thing we made for the show was the title, because throughout the entire process we had another name, and then we changed it. We had a few other names, and then at the end I was like, no, this is it. It came to me and I was like, I want to do this. But backing up, it's very interesting how life works, because I really didn't know that I liked, for example, documentary filmmaking, if you could call it that style, right? But if I presented, I guess, the facts of my life to someone else, it would be very clear, right? Because I love the human experience, I love advocacy, and I love a visual medium. So it makes sense that documentary filmmaking would just be the perfect fit. But I had to kind of go through, right? I had to go through all these different kind of places in my life to really kind of land on that final discovery, which is interesting because when I always reflect on that, I think I would never have kind of jumped straight to this, because it was something that I wasn't even considering. And essentially, after I finished my time at BuzzFeed, I felt like, you know, I learned what I could learn from there. I felt like I wanted to do something a little more personal, a little more off the beaten path. And so I really delved into my YouTube channel. And so there I really started to explore different types of storytelling elements. If, whether it's like, talking to a friend or doing different types of taking people along my day or focusing on different topics. And I had a friend who worked at USHub, which is the organization that ultimately produced Dinner Inshallah. And he came to me and he essentially was like, hey, this organization, this production company, they're thinking about doing this show. And they want to talk to you about it. So I thought it was going to be kind of more of a consulting call. Like they wanted to do this type of video or the show, and they just kind of wanted, creative production framework on how to kind of go forward. And when I talked to them, they were like, we want you to host it and be part of the production. So I was kind of taken aback. I was like, oh, I never hosted anything. I guess I could. And it was interesting because I was going to say no. I really was going to say no because I had never done anything like that before. But when I thought of it, and I kind of reflected on the fact that I had so many different experiences that equipped me perfectly for this next step, right? And whenever I kind of reflect, I always think about how everything we kind of go through in their own small ways really does prepare us for the next step we're going. And we're not even aware of it, right? We think, oh, I'm taking this random detour or this thing I wanted to do didn't work out. But really that thing was preparing you, right, for something else, which was exactly how I felt when I was finally presented that opportunity, because I thought this, I wouldn't have felt prepared for this just a year or two ago, but it came kind of at this perfect time. So essentially, we had an amazing team that we worked with, and the first kind of idea when it was presented to me was a food show, like a pure food show where we'd go to different restaurants. But, when I thought about it, I was like, food, and especially, immigrant food, Muslim food, doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? There's definitely community element, right?
Yeah.
And just like an ecosystem that really does contribute. Unfortunately, like a lot of our communities don't have the luxury of just saying, yeah, we'll make cheeseburgers and just kind of going on. There is a story there, right? There's something there that is powerful and also a community building element. So I wanted to really explore that. So it kind of takes the path of my life, because we start in the Bay Area where I went to school all the way down to San Diego where I'm from, all through California. And, it was really powerful for me to reflect that all those places and all the people I met kind of that we talked about and all the places I ate were places that I would not have been able to go unless I had went through those things, especially, when I look back and think about law school, sometimes, I'm like, oh, that was a lot of money and also a lot of time. But it's those moments that I remember that it was all really worth it because I'm able to tell this story so much better now.
Wow. Yeah. And I honestly, I love that it's a food show that's about so much more than food, as you said. And I was writing down all of the places you went to. I was like, when I go, I need to go here, I need to go here. Yes. I want to go to that bookstore. I want to go everywhere, all those coffee shops. But I think it's amazing because, I think it's so perfectly, it's wild. I think that you were going to say no because I couldn't imagine anyone who was better suited, even just when you were bringing your friends into it and stuff like that, people that you actually had established relationships with. I think that was such a beautiful thing, and I think just added so much to the community feeling of the whole project. But when you were kind of deciding then on where you were going to go, did they approach you with a place, or did you design that whole thing of I want to stay in California and these are the areas I want to hit, and it kind of has to do with me and my own history, or was that already what they were kind of planning?
It was kind of an evolution. I think at first we were going to go to a few different states, kind of on the West Coast or on the Western United States. But we essentially really wanted to hone in on these cities, right? Because it was places people, have heard of. And then it kind of evolved as I was working with the team to create where we're going. It became very personal, right? Because I think especially a show like that, I really wanted people to have a very deep connection to the places and feel like they were all places that I could kind of speak from experience, right? And even if it wasn't direct experience, it was something that I had kind of felt before or kind of seen before. And so I wanted to keep it that way. And I think that when we were going through those places, a lot of the places really, for example, you mentioned the bookstore in the first episode, but we were going to go to another restaurant, and that day it fell through. It completely fell through.
Oh.
And so we were like, what do we do? We're in this area, you know, and we had another restaurant that we were going to go to in the same area, so we couldn't leave. And so we're driving around, and I was like, hey, that bookstore is a Muslim bookstore. Let's just go in and see. Maybe we can just get some B-roll, right? So we walked in, and we talked to the owner, and he was like, yeah, we're one of the oldest Muslim bookstores in all of California. And we're like, what?
Yeah,
He's like, and I'm the founder, you know, and I'm the one who did this. And he had this whole story. We just talked to him, right? And things like that, when you really kind of put your trust, you know, in Allah, and really just do things for intention, and really just let yourself create, especially if you're creative. If someone like me, I need this reminder because I try to kind of put things into boxes. But when you really let yourself create and let go, amazing miracles really come true, and stories unfold exactly the way they're supposed to. So that was kind of how it happened. With all my friends, everything kind of really lined up. We wanted to keep it personal, but it really ended up being really kind of my whole story through California. So.
Which is so cool. Yeah. No, that's unreal. That's such cool, like, secret background information that the listeners of this podcast will now have.
Exclusive.
Yeah. You heard it here first from Amal. So is there like a plan to do like multiple seasons? Like, would you expand outside of California, or is that like project kind of,
you know, I don't know.
settled?
I would love to. No plans yet, but I would love to, you know. And I think for me, it sparked something in me where the whole process, it was something that I've never really done something like that before, right? Like it all of a sudden I had, you know, I was working with a director, we had editors and all this, but really I was always like a one-woman show, right? Like I did everything, whether it was like in my BuzzFeed days, my YouTube days, I was doing everything by myself. So I wasn't used to having so many people that I was working. It was amazing, but it's also challenging internally for me, because suddenly, you know, it was so many people and different, you know, opinions and putting trust in other people. So it was something that it was such a learning lesson, right? Because I was used to just being the perfectionist to me, and then just, you know, if I wanted something, it happened. But it was amazing, and I think I would be so open to doing something like that. But it was great just for my personal development, and for that I was so thankful.
Yeah, and totally, like, when you put your whole heart into something, it's like hard to kind of like let go of it to like also have other people kind of like contribute to it. So I totally get that. But it's such a great project, and if you want to find it, it's on Ashab, as I learned it is maybe the proper way of saying it today.
Ashab.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, and then so now you're kind of you've got your YouTube channel, and you're working on a couple of other projects, and you live in LA. How has that gone? Like, do you like it? Are you like, this is cool because of the work I want to do, but like, you know, like culture-wise, like how does it feel to be there?
Well, I'm back and forth between San Diego and LA. I do go to LA. It's a few hour drive. So I'm there. But LA, I think LA gets a really bad rap on social media. I always see, I don't know if you always see, but people kind of talking about how, you know, bad LA is, people want to move away, and I don't understand. I never kind of got that, because I love LA. I think if you are in certain environments in LA, and with certain type of people, if you're with bad people anywhere, it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be bad, right? I think LA has so many amazing spots and history and culture. It's so diverse and rich in so many different types of communities. I love it. I love kind of discovering, and I love the people I've met here. I think it's interesting kind of being in the creative space here, because everyone is hustling, right? It's interesting. It's like somebody you meet, you know, with working maybe an IT job or something else, on the side or on the weekends they're filming a short, or they're writing a script, or, you know, they're trying to make something else kind of pop off, or they're doing their music career. Everyone is just having a creative pursuit. And I thought that's so inspiring because,
to be around that energy.
Yeah, because people were just so, you know, driven. And something else I really learned about LA was that, you know, I learned this in LA, of course, this happened everywhere, but the kind of idea of your life can change in a year. Because you would be working with someone. For example, I don't know if you saw the show Abbott Elementary.
Yes.
So Quinta was my coworker at BuzzFeed. She,
you
know,
really?
Yeah, we overlapped for a very short amount of time, but she was kind of on her way out. And she was the only one I had heard of from BuzzFeed, because she was like a BuzzFeed, you know, breakout star, and so creative and funny and amazing. And I, you know, she was the only one I've heard of. And so I remember seeing her one day and, you know, being like, that's her. And she was always so kind, and just such an amazing, amazing human being and creative. And that was just, you know, someone I worked with. And people had similar stories where they're like, yeah. Me and so were whatever. And now they're at the Oscars like last week. So it was a place where it felt like your life could just change in a year. It really felt anything was around the corner at any given moment, or you can meet somebody who could change everything. Who can change you.
Yeah,
right.
That's so cool.
It was so inspiring in that way and exciting.
Yeah, because I think you're right. I think that, like, I went to LA. I've been there once. It was in 2018 to see Beyonce and Jay-Z on their Carter's tour.
I love that. Yeah, I saw that. I was there too at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, it was. Yes. And I was literally like, just for that. And my friends were like, we're going to go to LA to do this. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, who says no to that question? And I loved it. I also similarly felt like it was just like a chill, creative vibe that just really felt inspiring, because I feel like when I've been to New York, it has like a similar creative vibe, but it's not chill at all. It's like so like tense, you know? And I feel like, because I feel like people in New York similarly are also hustling all the time and stuff, but I think it was like, there was just like, it was like, oh, like this is where I, you know, this is where I could maybe chill for a bit and like be inspired. But yeah, I do think that it's so funny, because I do have this understanding that like people who live in LA don't like LA, but everyone I've talked to from LA loves LA. So I don't know where that comes from, but
I don't know.
But
either.
Yeah, it's
social media probably.
Yeah, probably. They're just trying to like discourage people from going there for like what reason?
I know.
Yes, but okay, the one thing I wanted to make sure that we discussed was We Are Lady Parts, because I love that show and I hear that you love that show, and so I wanted to talk about our love for that show because it's just so good.
I love that show. So years ago, I'm on this listserv, and someone had sent out I don't know what it was at the time. I think it was a trailer. The show wasn't even in.
Yeah.
Do you remember seeing that?
Yes, because they had different actors in it.
Yes.
And so I think it was in like 2019.
Yes.
And we, in the Mosquers chat, we'd like sent it around and we're like, look at this super cool thing.
Yes.
And then, it wasn't around. And then finally it came out and we were like, oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember seeing, because I'm somebody who keeps a very close eye on like Muslim content in the, general public, and I bet you do as well. So I'm always on the lookout, big or small, just like what the vibe is. And I remember just seeing it and being like, I'm obsessed with this. I need to see the show immediately, because it was so funny. And the thing is, for me, whenever I create kind of for like scripted things or like for Muslim, my ideal is things that essentially are Muslim, but aren't necessarily always talking about being Muslim, like it's happening in the background, right? It's like, because that's how we live our lives, right? It's like we are, Muslim, right? And it's like it's who we are, but we're also doing other things, right? That just are also a
that's
catalyst.
Not all we are,
right? It's a catalyst for our Islam, right? It's like that's just who we are, and so I love things that are true to life like that, right? I love that, and that was something that I loved about the way that and fast forward, when the show came out, I was so excited about it. And I love that it didn't take itself too seriously. Because for me, I love that they really played around with the idea of what it means to, be religious, right? Because you see different degrees of what that means. And for me, it was just really just like refreshing more than anything else.
It was so real. Yeah, it was so real. And I think that like, and we've had this conversation on the podcast before about Muslim representation and how like for so long, like the thing was like you had a Muslim character and they had to be perfect, because like you couldn't have a bad Muslim character because we had so few. And then we've kind of now evolved to what we think is like true, real representation where like these folks are allowed to be flawed and like are allowed to be, complex and like are allowed to kind of like have different intersecting parts of their identities and are allowed to kind of like be a little more free to like make mistakes and like kind of be on a journey even with their faith and everything, and how like that's what we want, like that's the real representation.
Exactly.
And similarly, the show does it so well because, as you said, it's like there's so many different kind of ways that people show up in their faith on the show, which I think, and you can recognize it. You're like, I know a person like that. I know a person like that. I'm this person. And I think it's just like so well done. And I love how funny it was.
Yeah. And like you said, everyone's dealing with their life. And I think I love that Islam is just a part of it, right? It's very much a part of kind of the things that they're going through and the things that they're thinking about, which is how they live our normal lives, right? Like, I think the beautiful thing about Islam is, we don't have the idea of like going to the mountains, secluding yourself and being by yourself and just worshiping all day. That's not a part of Islam. Islam is with the community, right? It's with people. It's in life. It's in politics. It's in government. It's in art. Like, it's always in there. And so I love when I see something that reflects that, right? It's like Islam is supposed to be within all those spaces, right? And it's not supposed to be just be in a vacuum by itself and dealing with kind of that idea. There's a place and time for that. Like if you're in a lecture and it's about Islam and you're in the mosque or wherever and you're kind of learning. But Islam is supposed to be lived, right? It's supposed to be a day-to-day kind of interaction and a really living and breathing religion that's kind of going through all the different kind of aspects of life, right? And I love when I see that reflected in TV. And I actually recently saw a movie. I don't know if you've seen it. It's it was on Netflix. I don't know if it's called Rocks.
No, I haven't seen Rocks.
Oh, it's another British movie. It did very well in the UK, but I haven't really heard of it here in the States. But it essentially follows a girl around. She isn't Muslim, but I don't want to give too much away, but essentially it's a very like the sad story about her kind of going through a day and kind of a time in her life when her mother kind of isn't with her for various reasons, and she's at school, and her best friend is a Somali Muslim girl, right? And she's hijab, and she is just a girl living her life, very just kind of free spirited. And there's even a scene where she asks to spend the night at her house, right? She goes to her house. And it's a very Somali household, right? Like, you have her mom speaking Somali, her dad, and, being kind of the snarky Somali kind of like humor that we have using that. But it was really real. And the thing that I loved is that her kind of Islam and kind of the interaction with her other students just felt very familiar. And one part of this that's really cool is the director actually co-directed with the entire cast and the crew. So they all actually worked on it together. And it felt, and I don't think a lot of the people were actually actors. Many of them weren't. Now they're kind of, I think, catapulted because it did very well there. But it felt like that. And like, I think kind of my goal in life would just to be to create something that really makes people feel in that way, right? To really just be able to see something on a screen and relate in a deep way that allows them to feel human, to feel very human, right? Regardless of whether or not they went through those exact experiences. But there's so few times, especially in life lately, where you feel really human, where you talk to someone, where you see something that allows you to just feel, connected in a very like, almost primal way where you feel that, I also recently saw Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh my God. I'm obsessed. I think that movie is the perfect movie.
It's so good.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you, I asked this question to another guest, I'm going to ask you. So Me and my 3 girlfriends, we all saw it separately, and like one of the like we all took something different away from it. I think like based on just like who we are as people. So my one friend, came to Canada. Like the other 2 of us were born in Canada. So the other friend like came to Canada, so is like a first generation immigrant herself. And she kind of like really connected to that kind of like familial immigrant storyline. My other friend has like some like stuff with her mom. And so like that was the kind of storyline, was like the mom-daughter relationship. And for me, it was like the love story, like the romantic part. And like the scene where he's like, in another life, I would give anything to just be doing taxes. I was like sobbing, like full on in the theater, just like, oh my God, love. Do you have like a part of that movie that really like resonated for you?
Yes. Also, I loved all those parts, but specifically when her husband, I forgot his name in the movie. I always forget names in the movie. But he gives that little monologue about kindness. I loved that, and I think that was kind of the takeaway, because it was like he essentially said, I don't know what's going on, and I feel like this is my fault. But I'm like getting like teary-eyed thinking about it. But he said, this is especially when we should be the most kind, is when we don't know what's going on. And I felt like that just really encapsulated the human spirit, because it was so indicative of the times in our lives when we don't really know what's going on. Even if you're just having a conversation with someone and you just aren't on the same page and you're like in a fight or something, that's when you should be the most kind of like kind. And not even
that's not the instinct,
right? But not even in a kumbaya way, because I'm very much like there is a right and a wrong and justice, and I always feel that way. But I'm not even that person. We're like, let's just be kind. Like I'm not. That's not usually my vibe, right? I'm not. I'm like a fiery Somali woman. I'm like, someone is wrong, and we will find
the person,
and it's not me, right? And we'll find it. But it felt very kind of like in that way, but also my other takeaway was that like, kind of on the same line of like, I'll be doing taxes with you here. But at the end, when the mother and daughter are talking, and she essentially is like, but you could be anywhere in the world. Yeah. And she was like, but I want to be with you. And it right made me feel like, it made me kind of remember kind of the idea of like, it's really about the journey. At the end of the day, like, it's really not about the destination, the feeling, because I think a lot of us have so many big goals, right? Like, we want to be we want to be the final evolution of ourselves, but it really is finding the joy every day in doing that thing, because how the journey feels like is how the destination will feel like, right? So it's like all these things that you're doing and all this kind of life we're living, because life is every day. Life is how you wake up. Life is, you know what I mean, the walk you go on every day. Life is kind of the how you talk to yourself when you're in a weird moment. It's not those like big moments. It's those little moments. It's the day to day. That's your life, right? And that's kind of what it reminded me of. It's like, it's not about those like big moments, right? And like, that's how kind of linking it all back, that's the power of a story, right? Because it's like, you can bring people into those little moments to remember the fact that that is your life, right? And that's why it's so powerful, the media. And it's like, you can remind someone that they have the power every day to tell your own story. And when I was a creative producer at BuzzFeed, I would work on a lot of non-scripted stuff. So I would work with people who've never been on a camera before. And sometimes they would have to tell really tough stories, right? And what I would always tell people before, and they were like, oh, and I'm like, first of all, we can edit anything out. So don't even worry about that. That's the first thing I would say. But the second thing I would say is, no one can tell your story like you can. Like, nobody can, because you are the expert. Because only you've gone through it and you know how to tell it. And we all can tell our own story, right? And like, that is just one of the most empowering things to me, being someone in this industry, and hopefully somebody with something to say, is that we all have something to say, right? And the quicker we kind of get to that realization, the more amazing stories what we will have.
That's beautiful. I love that. And speaking of which, just when you were talking, it reminded me, have you read The Midnight Library?
It's always been on my list, but I definitely heard of it.
Yeah, it's like I think you will love it based off of what you're saying. Like I found it very profound in terms of just I'm not going to spoil it, but like I think you'll like it. And then when you read it, please let me know. We can talk about it.
Yes. I know the general
you.
idea of it, but yes, I love that idea of multiple stories and kind of choosing your own reality, you know, in the choices you make. I love that.
Yeah, no, and I think it's so because and like you said, like not only is your lived experience the thing that makes you an expert, and like not only is it your story, but just like like the day to day, like we think that our lives are going to come down to these huge moments, and like we're going to be like, that's when I was happy, that's when there was joy, that's, you know, when all the good stuff was. But you're right, like it's not that. Like those big moments are beautiful and like alhamdulillah for them, but it's the joy that you find in the day to day. It's like the connection with the people in your life. It's the little things that you do for yourself. It's the way that you connect to the earth, to the, you know, the people, the community, like Allah, yourself. Like I think that it's really that's really cool.
Yeah. And something I'm kind of like, I love just kind of being outside, you know, and I'm like, wow, something I kind of realized recently, which is like so like dumb, but I'm like, we can see a sunset every day. You know what I mean? Like they happen every day.
Yeah.
And if we want, we can go outside and see them. Like, they're happening. Maybe not every day, depending on where you are. And I don't know how the weather is in Canada, unfortunately, but here, you know,
it's pretty good. It's debate. It depends on the time of year.
Yeah. But
when we have you here for Mosquers, it'll be great.
You know, and I can't wait. But it's kind of that idea of like, if you want to see things or do things or live life, you can. It's happening right now, right? And like that is something that for me is just a really powerful like realization too, and kind of bringing people with me through those things. I try to do that like on my YouTube channel, and kind of taking people through those stories is really just that idea of like life is happening and the fact that it's beautiful in all its messiness, you know, and that story in between, like having people, you know, go back to the everything everywhere all at once, you know, having somebody like me who doesn't necessarily have that experience crying in a movie theater, hearing that story is such a powerful kind of, by the way, fun fact. Do you know the directors of that movie do you remember
the Daniels?
Yes. Do you know the viral music video a few years ago, Turned Down for What? They made that music video.
Yes. Really?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
That music video is so
and
fun.
They're in
I
it.
love it so much.
They're in it.
Really? Oh.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna have to rewatch. That's so funny.
Anyway, but yeah, I was like making a profound point. I had to tell you that. But
no, I love that. That is information I needed to know. Absolutely.
But anyway, yeah. So that was kind of just I aspired to have people emote and connect. That's kind of my purpose, and I inshallah hope to do that in some type inshallah. Of median in my life.
Yeah, and so one thing that I thought was really cool was that you met Chris Martin, and he shared a quote with you that I also found very profound, which was that I don't sing well, I sing honestly.
Yes.
And how like that's hearing that from him also, first of all, like I love Coldplay. I don't get the hate. I'm obsessed. Like tell me about kind of like what that was like hearing that from him and how that's kind of applied to your own life when you experience things like, you know, imposter syndrome or something like that.
Yeah. First of all, yes, that moment was wild for me. But I have to paint the picture for you. It was January 2020. It was like the last thing I did.
Oh.
Basically before everything kind of became what it is now. But a friend of mine was like, hey, I had this like extra ticket to this Coldplay like concert and then like after party because I guess they were doing something with Chris Martin, like an interview or something. Do you want it? And I was like, okay. I'm not really a Coldplay fan. I'm not a Coldplay fan. I'm not like an anti-fan or anything. I just like, you know, I heard their songs on the radio.
Yeah, they're fine.
Exactly. I, of course, like had some favorites. I don't really know much about them. I know people, it was like, I know that they are one of the bands that people are like ride or died for. Like, yes. I knew that. You know, but I didn't know, like, I'm like, Chris is Beyonce's best friend. I know that. We're one of her only friends. I know that. Yeah. So I went to this, it was like in LA, and it was like, I forgot the name of the venue, but essentially we watched the whole show. We were on it's like this like mezzanine, like looking down. All these celebrities were there, which was like wild for me.
Wow.
Like, yeah, like Natalie Portman was there. It was kind of like
cool.
wild experience in its own. The wildest experience was that when people are up there, there's like a buffet of food. I was like, what? I'm like, I need to only watch concerts from this venue. Yeah. Anyways, so I jokingly looked at my friend and I was like, Chris Martin? You can actually sing, like, as a joke. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And later, it actually came up a conversation because Chris came up to us and was like, how did you guys like the show? You know, and we were like, great. And then my friend was like, well, Amal had this, like, realization as a joke.
Selling you out.
Yeah. You know, and he laughed. He was like, you know, and then he said, because my friend was like, she said, you know, you can actually sing. And he laughed at it. And he said, well, actually, I don't sing, you know. But I forgot you said it so well a second ago. I don't.
Yeah, I don't sing well. I sing honestly or something. I think that.
And when he said that, it was so interesting because I heard it and I kind of laughed it off. And then we had a conversation about something else. But at the moment, I was struggling with just such imposter syndrome because I was trying to be this person who made this art and made these like visual kind of, you know, encapsulations of my life and do it so well. But I was getting to a point where I was like, I'm not the best person to do this. Like, I have these ideas, but I just can't do it, right? And I was feeling so, you know, troubled by it because I know where I wanted to be, but I didn't feel like I was there. And I wanted to kind of do much more than I was able to do. And I didn't know how to kind of, I guess, you know, explain that to myself that, hey, you can do this, but you just need to really trust in yourself. And so when he said that, for me, my brain went, oh, at the end of the day, people are going to think that whether you're Chris Martin or you're, I don't know, anybody else, that you are not the best, like whatever it is. Like somebody out there will be like, about you. But the key is whatever you do, if you do it honestly and you have the trust to put it out into the world, the people who connect with that, who just something in their heart it speaks to, no matter if it's like, you know, trash, depending on someone else's perception, they will flock, they will find you, right? You will find that. And that's what it kind of, because, yeah, same with Coldplay or anybody else. You know, I was joking. I actually really loved that album that we saw him tour with, or them tour with. But it felt like kind of a, you know, like a green light for me that I can do things not perfectly, right? Or not expert level. Because the way that I'm doing them at the end of the day will resonate. The people that it's supposed to connect with, it will reach them. And I just have to have that
find
trust
them,
to do things as honestly as possible. Because at the end of the day, we're just doing things that we know. We're just doing things that we find familiar and we think are right. And especially putting it out into the world, that takes a lot of courage. And the people that are supposed to see it and resonate with it, they will come. So that's, I think, what it taught me. And it's funny because that experience really did, you know, it kind of made me reflect on so many things. And then we needed the one to lockdown. So I had to just like sit with all those feelings.
Oof, yeah. It was like forced.
Great. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's very cool. Okay, so we usually like to end with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So I will ask you, and it's just like the first thing that pops into your head. There's no right or wrong answer, and also no pressure. Like if you take time to think about it, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask some, and then we'll say goodbye, which I'm very sad about. But okay, starting with your most rewatched movie.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm so not a movie person, which is funny. I'm not. It's funny. I'm like,
interesting.
I know. It's like I love movies, but I'm not like a cinephile. Like I'm not like
rewatcher or okay.
Yeah. So,
okay.
but I have a lot. I love She's the Man. Have you seen that movie?
Oh, classic, of course.
I
when
love
we
that.
first fell in love with Channing Tatum. Yeah.
Yes, I love that movie. So I do like old movies in that sense, or like really like millennial movies. But I'm a much more of a show rewatcher than the movie rewatcher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your most rewatched show then? Would you say?
Okay, so I love Avatar. I love Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes,
the series.
Yes. Absolutely.
So amazing. I also love One Tree Hill. One Tree Hill is like it's a very specific 2000s nostalgia where I'm like,
yes,
remember this life? Like I love that. And I will argue
the fashion.
Yes, I will argue with anyone that One Tree Hill is like the best like teen show. It's just, it had everything. It was so in depth.
Okay, because my One Tree Hill is the OC.
Okay, I get it.
And I feel like the OC like changed the landscape of music in TV shows.
Okay,
because the music on that show.
No, because that was the OC. The OC did that, but yes, I understand. Because
sorry, that's what I mean. The OC did that.
Sorry. I meant One Tree Hill did that, but yes, I understand.
Okay,
but
fair
I
enough,
understand.
Fair enough. Okay, yes, we're on the same page.
Yes.
I think, but I feel like I think that was the thing. And anytime anyone's like, "Oh, I never really watched the OC," I'm like, "Get out of my car."
I know.
I don't want to. You can't get back in until
you can't. No, but my little thing is that Adam Brody went to my middle school, and he went to like my not at the same time. He's a few years older, but he went to my middle school, and then my history teacher had him. And everyone were like, "Oh my god!" That was when the show was out. It was when I was there, so people were like,
"Yes,
oh my god!" And she was like, "Yeah, he was here. He was so nice." And then he even in our yearbook, he won like most. He had like a most likely to make. Oh, I remember what it was. It was who you would most likely to want to be stuck in an elevator with. So he won that, and then he went to our rival high school. So he didn't go to my high school. He went to our rival high school. But yeah, that's my claim to fame. I'm sorry, I don't even know what the question was.
Oh, One Tree Hill, the most watched.
Yes.
Okay, One Tree Hill and the excellent choice. One Tree Hill did have fantastic music. No argument there.
And OC also did too. I'll give you
both
that.
Great. Yeah, they could both be tied for first place.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, what was the first concert you ever attended?
My goodness. You know, I didn't go to concerts when I was younger. It was all in my adult years. But I think it was definitely, so UCSD, we have this festival, like, it's I would say it was like a mini Coachella at the time. Because,
cool.
Yeah, because people would come from all over California. I think they changed the rules now, but people would come from all over California to go. And then the rules were that if the artist was performing at, it's called Sun God because that was our like little thing. If you're performing at Sun God, you couldn't actually perform at Coachella because it was like that big of a rival at the time. I don't know if it was really, but we had like Drake, we had, every single year, Wiz Khalifa, whoever the person. So I didn't go to any of them except I went my fourth year and that was Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, nice.
And I can't remember me going to a concert before that. But I maybe did, but that was one of the first I really remember, which was my fourth year.
That's a good first one.
Yeah, and so he was amazing. So I remember that.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, excellent. Okay, what is your most regrettable purchase?
Oh my gosh. I would say I got Uggs really early on, like during the first wave of Uggs.
Yeah.
But I got them in such an ugly color and they were so expensive. Actually, my mom got them for me with a gift and
expensive.
That's what I wanted. Exactly. And they're really, I don't know how much they are now. I know they're obviously having a moment again, but
yes,
I had the original tall one and they were like glittery. They were like, they had like a shimmer to them. They did. Okay. I'll send you a picture of them afterward. But they had like a
please do.
shimmer, and I just wish I got them in a different color. Like,
yeah,
and they were
was it
so
like
expensive.
in the brownie beige with the shimmer? Interesting.
Not beige, a little darker, like imagine like a caramel, like a darker caramel.
Okay.
But with the shimmer. It was weird. And I wanted to be different. I had to be different.
Yeah.
I couldn't get just the regular caramel one, which I should have got.
No.
But it was like a darker color. Yeah. So that's what comes to mind since we're on the millennial like wave
train. Yeah. Okay. Which Lady Parts band member are you most similar to?
I forgot her name, but the Niqabi. She is so funny.
Mumtaz.
Yes, Mumtaz.
Yeah, she's unreal. She's so funny.
So
okay, perfect.
Funny. I wish I could emulate her level of like, I don't care.
Just oh my god, no F's given. Yeah, so cool.
Confidence. So I want to say her is my aspirational answer.
Very nice. Excellent choice. I think for all of us, there should be a level of aspiration to that. And then last question, what is your favorite way to eat potatoes?
Ooh, okay, so I'll bring it back to like my Somali roots. We do like strips of potato in our rice. So we do, it's really good. It's like strips of potato, and sometimes people even put food coloring so they look like a different color, like an orangey color. Yes. Shameless plug. When I worked at BuzzFeed, I actually did this video with a friend of mine. It was called like an African rice video, where it was a few of us, and we it was for Tasty. I don't know if you know Tasty.
Yes,
it's like So we did a few people, and we all did our different rice recipes. So I did a Somali rice recipe, and it was funny because I had to like call my aunt and call my mom and just kind of had and they're all like, just put a pinch of it. I was like, but how much we need for the recipe for the website? And they're like,
what's a pinch?
Pinch. Just put enough. I don't know. Just put enough.
With your heart. Measure with your heart. Yeah.
So I had to do that.
How do I write that down?
Exactly. Yeah. But I love, and we have raisins in our rice as well, which is like really fun. But we also have strips of potatoes, or just, any shape. I don't think they have to necessarily be strips, but we put potatoes, and I just think they taste really good in that dish. So.
Yum. Okay, I'm gonna have to find some Somali potato rice.
Yes.
Awesome. Yes. What is it called?
Well, we just call it baris. There's like no special name for it, which just means rice. But if you go to any local, I don't know if you're near Toronto, but there's like 5 million Somali restaurants in Toronto. So yeah,
I'm on the other side, but I'll find one here.
I bet there. I mean, I don't know about Canadian population geography, but I bet there's Somali people everywhere.
Fine. Yes, we have a very big Somali population here in Edmonton, so I'm sure there's some that I can find somewhere.
Amazing. Excellent. You have to tell me what you think.
I will. I definitely will. Thank you. I'm so excited. I love potatoes. Sikandar doesn't like potatoes. This is like the question that is often like the
What's
dividing.
Your favorite way to eat potatoes?
I don't know that there's a wrong way. I don't know that there's a bad way. I feel like a classic is like, my mom makes these like potato. There's like ground beef on the inside, and then potato, like mashed potato on the outside, and they're like deep fried. And they're like they're so delicious, and so that's like the most nostalgic one that like I want to eat right now. But like depending on when you ask me, different answer.
Exactly. Waffle fries are always great.
Oh my god. Or like mashed potatoes, or like curly fries, like a good, like when you got a curly fry accidentally in your like regular fry order, and it was like
unreal.
Such a what a
small
gift.
blessing in this life, honestly.
Yeah, that's your daily moment of joy for that day.
Exactly.
Yes. But okay, so I should let you get back to your life.
No, it's okay.
But please stay in touch. Yes, this is so fun. So where can people find you in your work, and any projects that you're working on that you wanted to share with our listeners?
Well, you can check out my docu-series Dinner Inshallah on Asif, and you can also check out just my musings on my YouTube channel, Amal Dalmar, if you look that up. My Instagram is It's Amal World. It's like it's a small world.
Which I love.
Did you get it? People don't usually get it.
I did.
Okay.
No, that was perfection. I loved it.
Okay, great. I can't take credit. A friend of mine like made it, and like when Instagram first came out for me, she thought of it. But anyway, It's Amal World. I post there just kind of my thoughts and just kind of what I'm doing. And yeah, inshallah, keep me in your du'as. hopefully,
Definitely.
you'll see me on like a bigger scale one day as all of us. And
Yes. Yes, inshallah.
and I'll come back on the Halal Gap and we'll catch up.
Yes, and tell us all the amazing things you've been up to.
Yes.
Awesome. And also just a special shout out. As you would know if you've listened to the episode this far, we are down a co-host. But Sikandar's with his mom. Happy birthday, Auntie. We hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you so much, Amal. It was so lovely.
This was amazing. Thank you again.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Halal Gap. Stay tuned for more episodes and follow our brand new Instagram page at @thehalal_gap. The Halal Gap is a Mosquers production. You can find the Mosquers on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok by searching Mosquers Film Festival. Thank you to our sound editor Vikram Chouhan, our tile artist Narmeen Saiyed, and our producer Asif Quraishi. Please rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments about our podcast, you can email asif@themosquers.com. On behalf of Sikandar and myself, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time.